The blue smoke cleared, and screams of joy just filled the air. My sister, Chloe, was clutching her baby bump, with happy tears streaming down her face as her fiancé, Mark, kissed her. It was a boy. Our whole family was cheering and hugging, totally swept up in the moment. Chloe grabbed the microphone, her voice shaky with emotion. "Thank you all for being here," she started. "Mark and I are so thrilled to be welcoming a baby boy." She paused and her eyes locked with mine across the lawn. She gave me this small, knowing smile, and right then, a cold dread just washed over me. "And we've already chosen the perfect name for him," she announced. "We're going to name him Theodore." The entire world went silent. Theodore. Not just any name. My name. The name I'd picked out for my future son when I was just a teenager. It was our grandfather's name, the man who taught me how to read and told me I could do anything I put my mind to. He passed away when I was 16, and from that day on, I knew I would honor him by naming my first son Theodore. It wasn't some big secret. The whole family knew, but nobody, not like Chloe, knew how deep that name was carved into my heart. I remember the night I told her about my own struggles. My husband, Tom, and I had been trying for a baby for 2 years. That's 2 years of negative tests, false hopes, and quiet, crushing heartbreaks. One night, after a really awful doctor's appointment, I just sobbed in Chloe's arms. I told her how I pictured our son, our little Theodore, and how holding on to that image was the only thing getting me through the pain. She held me. She told me it would happen, that my dream would come true. She promised me. Chloe and I were always close, but she's always had this competitive streak. You know the type. When we were kids, if I got a new doll, she absolutely needed the same one, but with a better dress. When I made the varsity soccer team, she tried out the next year. Not because she even liked soccer, but because she couldn't stand me having something that was just mine. As we got older, it got more subtle. She'd buy the same car as me, discover my favorite little hole-in-the-wall restaurant and claim it as her own, or drop my personal stories into conversations like they'd happened to her. I always just let it slide. It was just Chloe being Chloe. Annoying, sure, but I thought it was harmless. When she announced her pregnancy, I was genuinely happy for her. Her journey was so easy, a surprise oops after only a few months with Mark. I hosted her engagement party, helped her plan the baby shower, and listened to every single complaint about morning sickness, all while I was silently carrying the weight of my own empty womb. I really thought, so naively, that this was something she wouldn't try to copy. That motherhood, this incredibly personal journey, would be different. That she would respect the one thing, the only thing, I had ever asked her to leave for me. Standing there on that perfect lawn, surrounded by blue confetti and smiling faces, I realized how stupid I'd been. This wasn't just her wanting what I had again. This was her deliberately trying to erase my dream. She had taken my hope, the name I whispered to myself on the darkest days, and was parading it around like her shiny new prize. That smile she gave me? It wasn't joy. It was a victory lap. My husband Tom's hand found mine, his grip so tight and grounding. He knew. He'd been there for every tear, for every whispered dream of our Theodore. His eyes, dark with anger, met mine, and in them, I saw all the permission I needed. I saw my mom look over at me, a flicker of pity in her eyes before she turned right back to congratulate Chloe. My dad was already patting Mark on the back. They knew, too. And they were just going to let it happen. They were going to let her carve out a piece of my heart and call it a party. A hot, white rage, the kind I have never felt in my entire life, just burned through my veins. It was a fire fueled by years of being copied, of being made to feel small, of her taking and taking while I gave and gave. This wasn't just about a name anymore. This was about respect. It was about the promise she made me on that tear-filled night. I let go of Tom's hand and just started walking. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, their happy chatter dying down as they saw me marching toward that makeshift stage. Chloe's smile faltered. She held the microphone a little tighter, a defensive look on her face. "That's a beautiful name, Chloe," I said. My voice was eerily calm. I reached out and I took the microphone right out of her hand. She resisted for a second, but I didn't back down. The feedback shrieked, silencing the last of the whispers. "A truly beautiful name," I repeated, turning to face our family and friends. "Theodore. That was our grandfather's name. A man of integrity. A man who valued honesty above everything else." I let that just hang in the air. I could feel every single eye on me. The atmosphere, so festive moments before, was now thick with tension. I turned back to my sister. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fury. "I'm so glad," I went on, my voice starting to shake, "that you found a name with such a strong, moral legacy. I'm sure it'll be a wonderful thing for him to live up to. Especially, given the circumstances." Mark stepped forward, putting a protective hand on Chloe's arm. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, his brow furrowed. And that's when I lit the match. I looked from Mark's confused face to my sister's terrified one. Oh, she knew what was coming. Her eyes were pleading with me, a silent, desperate beg for mercy. But where was her mercy when she decided to steal my son's name? "It's just," I said, my voice suddenly clear and steady, "I think it's incredibly brave of you, Chloe. To give your son a name that means so much to our family, when you haven't even told his father that he might not be the father." The silence that followed was absolute. A heavy, suffocating blanket just smothered the entire party. If you've ever had to stand up to a family member who betrayed you, tell me about it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about getting the justice you deserve. The first sound was a collective, sharp gasp from the crowd. Mark's face went from confused to disbelieving, then to a dark, chilling shade of fury. He slowly turned his head to look at Chloe. "What is she talking about, Chloe?" he asked, his voice was dangerously low. Chloe just stood there, frozen. Tears were streaming down her face again, but these weren't happy tears. They were the frantic, messy tears of someone whose perfect little world had just been blown up. My aunt was the first to speak, shrieking at me, "That is a horrible thing to say." My father rushed forward and grabbed my arm. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed. But I ignored them. My focus was on Mark, who was still just staring at Chloe, waiting for an answer. "Chloe," he repeated, his voice cracking. She finally broke, the words tumbling out in a choked sob. "It's not true. She's lying. She's just jealous, she's always been jealous of me." But the lie was so obvious. Everyone could see it. The secret I had kept for her for 6 long months was now out in the open. The secret she'd confessed to me in a panicked phone call after a wild weekend before she and Mark were even officially exclusive. She had sworn me to secrecy, crying about how it was a one-time mistake and that she just knew the baby was Mark's. She just wasn't 100% sure. And she was too scared to tell him. I let the microphone drop to the grass with a thud. "Am I lying, Chloe?" I asked quietly. "Or are you just mad that the one person you told your dirtiest secret to is the same person whose biggest dream you decided to steal in front of 60 people? And that was it." The party just imploded. Mark was screaming at Chloe, demanding the truth. Chloe was sobbing hysterically, denying everything. My mother was trying to pull me away, telling me I'd ruined everything, while some of Chloe's friends started yelling at me. The whole thing went from a pastel-colored party to a chaotic family disaster movie. Tom came and wrapped his arm around me, guiding me away from the blast zone. We walked away from the house, and the sounds of shouting and crying slowly faded behind us. I didn't look back. I didn't feel triumphant or satisfied. I just felt empty. But it was a clean kind of empty. The kind that comes after you finally clear out a room full of junk you've been holding on to for way too long. The fallout was, to put it mildly, a total train wreck. Mark and Chloe broke up. A paternity test later confirmed the baby was, in fact, Mark's, but the trust was just shattered. He couldn't get past the lie. My parents were furious with me for months. They said I was cruel and vindictive, that I could have handled it privately. And maybe they were right. But when you get pushed and pushed and pushed, sometimes the only thing you can do is push back with everything you've got. The betrayal wasn't private, so my response wasn't going to be either. My relationship with Chloe? It's gone. We don't speak. I see pictures of her son on social media sometimes. She didn't name him Theodore. He's a beautiful little boy, and I truly hope he has a happy life. But the bond between his mom and me is broken, probably forever. Then, about 6 months after that disastrous party, Tom and I finally got the news we had been praying for. I was pregnant. The moment I saw that positive test, all the drama and anger from the past year just melted away. It was replaced by this profound, overwhelming sense of peace. 9 months later, I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy. We didn't name him Theodore. As much as I loved it, the name just felt tainted by betrayal. So, we chose a new name. A name that wasn't tied to the past or to anyone else. It was just for him. Just for us. Holding my son in my arms, I knew I hadn't really lost anything that day at the gender reveal. I had just made space for something so much better. I learned that sometimes, you have to burn a bridge to find a new path forward. And my path, with my husband and my wonderful son, was finally, beautifully, my own.